Johninthemiddle Show, episode 4. I'm Chris. Again, I got y'all with the same joke last week. How did that happen? I'm John in the middle in all actuality. And this is a brand new, well, not brand new, but it's brand new to this wall. Goldwater silk scarf. Figured I'd spice up the set a little bit. Figured I'd get caffeinated with you guys. Well, I don't know what you're drinking out there, but I'm drinking coffee over here because you deserve a good podcast. And good podcasts start with great energy. Let's go with that because it sounds good. What's going on with y'all, man? What's up? Man, there's a lot going on in the world on planet Earth. My dog Midnight agrees. Not now. Nope. Go. Beat it. Man. So this VERSUZ talk has gotten very spicy and very disrespectful. A lot of y'all out there, a lot of y'all hip hop fans are wild disrespectful. To who? John in the Middle? To none other than the GOAT. The GOAT, Jay-Z. And that is where episode 4 is going to start. We're going to get this right the fuck out the way. A lot of y'all are very disrespectful to Sean Carter. There have been whispers on Twitter and Clubhouse about Jay-Z and his opinion on his own artistry. Said opinion saying that no one can see him in a VERSUZ. And a lot of y'all, with your disrespectful behinds, said that Lil Wayne could take Jay-Z. The disrespect. A lot of y'all really read that tweet, heard that Clubhouse clip, and said, you know what? Lil Wayne could take Jay-Z. Matter of fact, let's play it. Let's play what Jay-Z said.
Nobody can stand on that stage with me. I ain't gonna lie, no disrespect. Everyone's amazing and done what they done. No one can stand on that stage with me. I'm just telling you guys the real. It's not a shot. There's not a chance in hell that anyone can stand on that stage with me for I don't know how long it is. 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours.
Right.
Look, you gotta stand in front of the Grammy Family Freestyle Live. No one's ever even seen me perform that. Like, you got to stand in front of that. That ain't gonna never happen, man. Let's move on from VERSUZ and let's get back to the this Keys album.
Jay-Z versus Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne is the farthest thing from a quality performer. The farthest thing. On top of the fact that he's been rapping about the same 4 things since 2005. That doesn't mean he's not a great rapper. That doesn't mean he shouldn't be in anyone's top 10. Like what you like. What I will say about Lil Wayne that I cannot say about Andre 3000, I know y'all like that, is at the very least, Lil Wayne has complete bodies of work. Several of them being classics, or considered to be classics anyway. And I join in that celebration as well. The Carter 2 and 3 are both classics. We're not going to go back and forth about that. They're both classics, period. But you want to take a lean addict and put him in front of Sean Carter? It's not going to work. Well, it's not going to work out for Lil Wayne anyway. Jay-Z, with his title freestyles, with his live random performances, will wipe the floor with Lil Wayne because he's a better performer, and Jay is the most dangerous rapper in hip-hop when it comes to live performance, freestyle of a verse you've never heard before, and a deeply hip-hop beat. Combine Sean Carter a deeply hip hop instrumental and a live audience in a stage, and Jay-Z is leveling anyone you put in front of him. Jay-Z versus Kanye. Kanye is no walk in the park. Let's be very clear. Kanye got the beats and the songs. Staples in culture. Songs that highlight important moments in all of our lives as millennials. But what we're not going to do is pretend like Kanye West and Jay-Z both rap at the same level. We could do a lot of things during this podcast. You guys are at home or wherever you're at watching this. You have the option to do a lot of things. What we're not going to do is pretend like Kanye West and Jay-Z are on the same level rap-wise. We're not going to do that. I won't allow it. I won't allow it. My hair is bunned up. I'm wearing a white tee. I'm in no mood to play games. Let's not do this. We're adults. Okay? We all got Twitter accounts. We're all functioning, healthy, sane adults. We're not going to pretend like Kanye and Jay-Z are on the same level in rapping. Jay-Z would stomp a mud hole through Kanye in terms of rapping. If Jadakiss can do a live freestyle at a VERSUZ battle and literally change the entire trajectory of his career in one night, if you give that opportunity to Sean Carter, someone is not walking away with the same healthy career. Jay-Z is going to destroy someone's career. He's going to do it gleefully. He's going to laugh about it. He's never going to let anyone else forget about it. And you will all have your jaws on the floor because you forgot how incredible this man is as a wordsmith. He's in the Rock Hall of Fame. He's a billionaire. He's married to Beyonce. He has successfully pulled off a Basquiat haircut and being a billionaire at the same time, giving all of us hope. What can you say about Jay? Y'all are just disrespectful. And then Drake, right? This is the part where a lot of people go, he ain't gonna beat Drake. Drake got them smacks. Drake got songs. Drake. And anyone who knows me in real life knows I'm a huge Drake fan. Huge Drake fan. Nothing Was the Same got me through a lot. A lot. But is this going to be another instance where we pretend that Drake is saying things that are as substantive as Sean Carter? Is this the part where we pretend that we like Drake because he says things that are important? Or are we going to remain the adults that we already are and acknowledge that Drake's songs are incredible? He makes beautiful melodies, timeless songs, timeless works of art, ... that have very little to no substance. Doesn't mean it's not good. Doesn't mean I'm not going to listen to Drake after this podcast. Doesn't mean that I don't think Drake is a GOAT. It just means Jay-Z will wipe the absolute floor with Jay-Z. That's true too. Jay-Z would wipe the floor with Jay-Z. But in this context, Jay-Z would stomp a hole through Drake. Why? Because his work is more substantive and he has more experience. It's that simple. Jay has more experience and he's talking about more important things. Can you picture a Drake album? Can you picture the Drake version of 444? Of course you can't. Of course you can't. I'm trying to figure it out now, and I'm like, hey, I don't know if I want to listen to this because I'm pretty sure it's going to, like a third of that version of Drake's album is going to be, like a third of that album is going to be about some kind of like, some like Swiss model or something like that he don't even care about. And there's a lot of people who can relate to that. But is it of substance? What was Jay-Z talking about on 444? Family building. Therapy, being a man amongst men, being a leader, being a father, being an elder statesman in hip hop. That's what Jay was talking about. And you want to put Drake in front of him? A man that has 20-something years over him? A lot of y'all don't understand the relevance of that, or like respect the experience that Jay-Z walks into rooms with, and that will be your downfall. You know what you should do? You should bet. You should put money on whether or not Jay would win against whoever your favorite rapper is, so you can lose that money. And then I can tell you I told you so. Jay's not losing to anybody. He edges people out when it comes to very specific things. Performance, Jay-Z's gonna whoop Lil Wayne on performance. Jay-Z's gonna whoop Kanye on rap skills. Jay-Z's gonna whoop Drake on substance. And if any of them three want to play when it comes to a freestyle, Jay-Z is going to stomp a hole through them. Jay-Z's probably the one rapper living right now that you don't want to play with a live freestyle. Sorry. If Jadakiss can do that, Jay-Z can definitely do that. Y'all are disrespectful. And the disrespect extends even further. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with verses, but if we're going to talk about great Brooklyn MCs, I got to bring up Biggie. And if I'm going to bring up Biggie, I got to bring up who I prefer over him. Y'all not going to like this, but Tupac. Mind you, yes, I'm from Jamaica, Queens. Yes, I'm from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Yes, I'm a native New Yorker through and through to the bone marrow. But Tupac is better. Sorry. Tupac is better. Tupac talked about more important things. Tupac had a bigger impact. Tupac had a bigger imprint. Now, it's in everyone's best interest to not get me wrong. I love Machine Gun Funk. I love Flavor in Your Ear with Biggie. I love Hypnotize. Biggie has some timeless works of art to where if you didn't consider them classics or masterpieces, something's wrong with you. Right? And I'm sane as the day is long. So when I hear a Biggie song that is a masterpiece, I'm going to consider it just that. However, if, and we don't have to, but if we're talking about Biggie versus Tupac, which is what a lot of hip-hop fans like to do, so let's get into it. This is a podcast about art and culture, and hip-hop and music en masse is definitely just that. So we're more than within, guys, to discuss this kind of stuff. Biggie was making incredible raps, and they sound great, and then he would take the word lyrical, right? And then he would rhyme it with something like schmiracle, or he'll take lyrical and then rhyme it with miracle. And then everybody, including me, everybody like, oh, Biggie just rhymed some words. Oh, Biggie, oh. And then Tupac would start talking about Dear Mama. Brenda's Got a Baby. And then he would do a song like Checkout Time. Or California Love. Or I Get Around, or Do For the versatility of this artist, the versatility of Tupac puts him in a completely different class. I'm even willing to say the space, the way that like XXXTentacion could do like a reggaeton song and then like a hip hop song, Tupac could do the exact same thing. I'm not saying they're similar, but I'm saying that's a very rare space of air. To be able to exist in hip hop as a hip hop MC and keep up with someone like, you know, like Ice Cube or Biggie, but also you're rapping about things that are substantial, and you're rapping about things also that are radio friendly, right? I Get Around, Do For Love. Tupac could exist in multiple places or spaces at once. And more importantly, and this is what I hedge my argument on, Tupac in general, his art was just more important. It was more substantial. The thing that Tupac and Biggie's rap had in common was, if we're going to polish it up as much as possible, the thing that Biggie and Tupac's raps had in common was the real-time journaling of the plights of inner city black people, particularly black men. A subject matter that none of us can get enough of, and it needs to continue to be spoken about, even in the ways that it's discussed in rap today. Right? Hip hop started as essentially an SOS message, right? It's entertainment, but it's also talking about the severity of the situation that black people are in this part of the world, and have been for most of our time historically in this part of the world, which is in poverty. And from that poverty came an art form that governs culture globally today. So when a rap artist is talking about those topics directly, for me, that's important. For me, that is substantial. For me, that's more important than hearing about your adventures in crack selling. To people that look like us, does that mean I don't listen to G Unit because they talking about the same thing, or 50? No, it just means if we're talking about Biggie or Tupac and who's better, we don't have to ask who's better. We could just be black people who are grateful for incredible artwork that was gifted to us, but from these brilliant black men who lost their lives incredibly too soon, like way too soon. We could do it like that. But if we're going to do any kind of ranking, if we're going to do top anything, which is what hip hop tends to do most of the time, Biggie being ranked higher than Tupac is blasphemy, especially if you're black, in my personal opinion. I just, in general, and then this has to do with my opinion on visual art too. Like in general, if you're a part of a group of people who are being celebrated or advocated for or represented in a form of art, why would you not choose that art or that artist and patronize them? Why would you choose another artist who isn't concerning themselves with your issues to the degree of rapping about them? You have a choice, right? You could patronize an artist that makes incredible artwork that also has found a way to address topics and issues that concern and affect you. Or you could choose an artist to patronize that entertains you, but only entertains you. There's nothing wrong with being entertained by rap. That's why I listen to it too. But if we can walk and chew gum at the same time, why aren't we? And why haven't we asked ourselves how the things that we spend time and energy and attention and resource on, how can these things help us? And if we're not asking those questions, do we value our attention? Because the only way that these artists gain, maintain, boost relevance is when we pay attention to them. So what's the cost of your attention? It doesn't matter that they're not talking about things that affect you on a daily basis. For a lot of people, the answer is no. For me, the answer is always yes, that matters. And Tupac always found a way to talk about things that were relevant to me and people that look like me. And other rappers, including Biggie, would rather talk about other rappers would rather talk about their adventures in the street. And I happily listen to those, and they're entertaining, and I enjoy them too. But which artist is better? And what's your criteria? Is one artist better than the other one because you like the way their music sounds? And that's all you need? That's all you need. It don't matter that they're asking you for money. They're asking you to go to a concert. They're asking you to follow them on Instagram and social media platforms. They're asking you to listen to and buy their music. They're asking you to buy merch. And most of the time, they are not talking to or about you at all. You just like the way the music sounds. And for a lot of people, that's enough. And I think that for me as an artist, that's never enough. Because my attention and my time and my resources are worth more. And I just wonder from my peers, is it the same thing? When Andre 3000 shows up every 8 years and does one guest verse because he's scared to rap and he doesn't feel like it and it's a young man's game and I don't want to do it. That's all y'all need? Okay. I need more. I need more. You're asking me to listen to you after you've been gone since 2009 or some shit. And you're asking me to take you seriously while you're on this DJ Unk remix of Walk It Out randomly. And for me, I'm like, bro, where have you been? We've been going through all type of stuff. Flint, Michigan ain't had no water, all this type of stuff. You in cafes in Atlanta playing the flute, and that's who you are. But that same person is not the kind of person that would rap about Flint, Michigan's lack of clean water. And who am I to tell an artist what they should be rapping about? That's just the kind of thing that I think about when I haven't seen you in 8 or 9 years and you show up on some random person's remix. Like Andre 3000 on a Divine Council remix. Was it fire? 100%. But bro, where have you been? We had a whole Trump presidency. Where has your genius behind been? And for most Andre 3000 fans, as I've learned recently, it's no, but listen, he said lyrical and then he said schmirical. I don't need anything more than that. And I'll be looking back at people like, you must mean it. You must mean it. Because I need way more than that. I need way more than that. And I'm holding you to task, Andre 3000, because unlike most people that love your music, I'm an actual black artist. So I know what it takes to make art. I know what it takes to push through what you don't want to do to produce art for yourself and for others, and the benefit of yourself and the benefit of others. So you have the option of participating or not and making whatever excuses you want, and whatever you say is relevant. But will you be considered a GOAT? N-the-fuck-O. No, you are no GOAT. You are a brilliant wordsmith. You are a great rapper. You are not a GOAT in any way, shape, or form. Please disagree with me. Meet me in the comments. They're right down there. They're below this video. They don't bite. I checked. You disagree. You love Andre 3000 so much that he doesn't need to give you anything of real substance or longevity. Meet me in the comments. Let's get it. Let's get it. Why not? Do I enjoy Andre's work? Yes. Can he be a GOAT? No. You need more work. What are the standards? Who's creating them? At least in hip hop, the concept of a top anything comes from us, right? When you look at the criteria in a field like visual art, seldom is that criteria that was created by us, right? And I suppose I'm mentioning that now because I'm thinking about like the difference between hip hop and visual art as pertains to black people, like black hip hop or hip hop in mass in general, and like black art is the criteria for hip hop was created by us and then sold to record labels. The criteria for black art was not created by black people at all. The criteria for black art was unknowingly created by Eurocentric arts institutions by patronizing artists like Basquiat. And is it a problem? No. However, this is the thing, like culture in general in the Western world is really black culture. So I find it odd that like when you in dealing with visual art, black people have made or contributed to culture that winds up in Nabisco TV ads, or it winds up in the promotion of social media platforms, or it winds up in sports. Like the imprint of black culture is in all of these spaces in Western society. But the imprint of black culture is not present in the arts. And if it was, black people would have chose Basquiat. Black people didn't choose Basquiat. Black people did not choose Basquiat. White arts institutions chose Basquiat. And I think they chose Basquiat because Warhol chose Basquiat. And a lot of times when I talk about Basquiat, I think people think that I don't like the way his artwork looks. And that's why I say so much about Basquiat. When the reality is, I think his art is terrible. But that's not why I'm saying all this. There's plenty of artists who have reached great heights with less than quality work. My issue is black people didn't choose this person. In fact, black people didn't have an opportunity to choose anybody in terms of black art. White arts institutions chose Basquiat, and black people who knew enough to pay attention to art so they look cool then championed Basquiat and then sold us that brand or his artwork as an item of luxury via culture. Parentheses, hip hop. Artists like Jay-Z and Rick Ross and Kanye West, producers like Swiss Beats have all championed Basquiat because white people have championed Basquiat. These same people, I have never, ever, ever, ever heard them utter a word about Selma Burke or Alan Locke or Jacob Lawrence. And a lot of y'all don't even know who the fuck I'm talking about because you weren't taught who these people are. These are all figures from the Harlem Renaissance. And I just wonder, how is it in 2021 going into 2022? Basquiat is the example of black art excellence when Augusta Savage had a whole career. When Selma Burke did Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the U.S. dime, the 10 cents dime, the image of Franklin D. Roosevelt that you see on the heads side of the dime was created based on a sculpture from Selma Burke, a black woman from the Harlem Renaissance. And we have all this time and energy for Basquiat and none for the figures of the Harlem Renaissance. Figures that were talking about things that were frankly put just more important to black people, and they weren't indirect or foggy or at the bequest of gallerists that don't care about what's best for black people. And I'm not saying that those same gallerists should, but what I am saying is we prioritize the few black people that care about art that are out there in general prioritize Basquiat's work because we've seen his work be prioritized by other people. Now, if you tell me you love Basquiat's work after reviewing Ramiri Bearden's, I don't have anything to say to you. But if you know Basquiat's work and you don't know Ramiri Bearden's, that's probably a result of some weirdness. That's what I'll call it. It's a result of some weirdness. It's like a lot of times people wonder. I remember, like, I had just posted something because this is a sticking point for me. Can you tell? This is like important to me. It's so unclear, right? Someone was I was talking to a friend of mine, and I had made mention of Basquiat's heroin addiction potentially being how and why he may have been taken advantage of by gallerists and curators. And for that reason, it could be that nowadays he's prioritized as a GOAT in black art, when in reality, he was someone who was easy to take advantage of, possibly because of his afflictions. And this person I was speaking to took that as me being non-empathetic. And I found that confusing because I hadn't called him outside of his name. I didn't say anything disparaging about him because of his affliction. I just said what it was. He transitioned early in his late 20s because he had this powerful addiction to this substance. And it could be that because he was addicted to that substance throughout his career, that he was available to be taken advantage of. It's exactly how I said it. And it was assumed that because I said that, I was not having as much empathy as I could. This person, I'm only mentioning this because I think it's relevant. This person was not black or male or from New York City. I'm only mentioning that because from where I sit as a black male from the inner city, the example that so many people would put in front of me to prioritize is Basquiat. And I've always been intelligent. And even as an intelligent young man, I would ask myself, like, should I tell this to my parents or my grandparents when I ask them for art supplies, money? Because if I ask them for art, now I'm just telling you how it was for me growing up as a Jamaican American, growing up in a Jamaican household, right? I knew for a fact that if I asked my Jamaican grandmother for money for art supplies, and for whatever reason, let's say she asks me, well, what's an art? Let's say she had no idea what an artist is. A lot of us don't. A lot of our parents and grandparents don't exactly know what that means. They've heard it, but they don't know. Let's say she was to ask me, what is an artist? And I explained to her what an artist is. And then she says, oh, that sounds okay. Who is an artist? Can you show me an example of an artist? And I show her Basquiat. And I show her Basquiat's artwork. And then she finds out how and why he transitioned. And that is the chief example of excellence for me as a black artist as a child. And now my grandmother sees that Basquiat is the #1 example of excellence for me as a black artist as a child. How likely is it that she's going to want me to wind up like that? See, a lot of people who care about art assume that everybody is going to prioritize the art, right? And even when the artwork is actually quality, which in Basquiat's case, it is not. Get in the comments. People still are like, I don't see the value in this. But when you look at Basquiat's work, and then you know his life story, if you're a black parent, why would you want that to be an example of excellence for a kid who looks like you, who's into art? My issue with Basquiat isn't so much him or his artwork, whether I enjoy it or not. It's the fact that this is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of an example of excellence in and for black art. And for kids, for someone like me when I was a kid, I couldn't use him as an example because I would not be supported because of how he transitioned. To me, this is so obvious. But everyone's just like, nah, you being empathetic. You not being empathetic. You should. And it's like, man, I don't know where y'all grew up. And maybe everyone's parents are more understanding than mine. But if I showed my grandparents Basquiat's work and they knew about his life, I would probably be playing football right now. I wouldn't even be doing this podcast. I'd be playing football right now. Because they wouldn't have supported that. They barely supported me doing art as is. And I didn't have any examples of excellence. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have anyone in the neighborhood I can go, look at this person. They do art and look at that. I didn't have anything like that. The lowest hanging fruit was Basquiat. And even as a kid, it didn't make sense to me to present him as an example of excellence to my family because I knew they wouldn't support it. Why? Because of his life story, bro. You think that that doesn't matter? It so matters. It's not the only thing that matters, but it's a factor. That matters, bro. I don't know how I wound up talking about Basquiat after talking about hip hop. But I did. What else is going on? I was watching a podcast, and it was about AI and how what should be happening right now. Like when you look at like sci-fi, be it like iRobot or Terminator or even Avatar or just stuff like that. When dealing with artificial intelligence, at least from the sci-fi perspective, there's always the threat of them, like the Matrix, of them like taking over and doing all this kind of weird stuff, right? And the more and more AI gets real, the more that's a real like plausibility. That's like a real that's like a real plausibility. So I wonder how to avoid that, right? And this podcast was saying, like, the way to avoid that is to produce AI that addresses how AI can mimic human common sense to make the best decisions on its own, right? Because the one thing that artificial intelligence has not figured out thus far is how to make decisions rooted in common sense. Like machines and robots, based on my research thus far, machines and robots understand like numbers and algorithms and stuff, but life on Earth for humans is so much more than numbers and algorithms. It's so much more than black and white. In fact, most of life is in a gradient, right? And robots don't register that. So this podcast was saying the first kind of AI that we should produce is AI that tackles the issue of how to utilize human common sense as a robot, right? Like, let's just say, like, even with like a movie like iRobot, there was a scene in iRobot where Will Smith's character unfortunately gets into a car accident, and it's with another car, and both of them fall into a body of water, and his car is above the other car, but the car below him has a little girl in it. A robot comes to save them, but because of the algorithm, the robot recognizes that Will Smith's character has a better chance of surviving. So it saves Will Smith's character and lets the little girl perish. What this podcast was saying was that the first kind of artificial intelligence should register and account for the kind of common sense that human beings naturally have. That should be the first thing, right? And I tend to agree. But there's a bigger cultural conversation here. And I think it's one that, in terms of artificial intelligence and machine learning and futurism in general, at some point it has to be addressed. And some point means like in the next like 5 years, is the concept of free labor. Some of y'all are like, what does that have to do with robots? That's the point of a podcast. I'm going to expand. Just wait one moment. The concept of free labor. We're creating robots as a society so that we can get our time back. Just follow me on this. We're creating robots so that the work that we don't want to do, we can give it to robots. Right? Some of y'all see where I'm going with this. Stay tuned. Right? That is the general, like, why are we making robots? Because there's work that has to get done that we don't want to do. So we want to create robots that'll do it for us. That sounds like it makes sense. However, with AI having such massive potential, the kind of chaos that we saw in the Matrix, or in iRobot, or in Terminator, or even in Avatar, that can happen potentially if AI does not have the kind of common sense that I was just referring to several minutes ago, right? For that kind of common sense to occur, there has to be a certain kind of cultural reckoning that has to do with robots, but has more to do with us as human beings. The cultural reckoning that I'm referring to is we have to address colonialism and chattel slavery, particularly in the West, right? The last time the concept of free labor was utilized or employed was during colonialism. Christopher Columbus asked some king somewhere, something to to get some money. I think it was Italy or something like that. To get some money, or England, some shit. To get some money so he can sail around the world and find new land and stuff. And they gave that boy the money, and he went sailing around the world, tearing stuff up, and now we have capitalism. Colonizers got to Africa, colonizers got to South America, started killing people, enslaving people, kidnapping people, bringing them to the West Indies, then from the West Indies bringing them to America after beating the African out of them and creating slaves, and then brought them to America through ports in states like North and South Carolina, Florida, Georgia. And over the course of centuries, forced people of African descent to work hard labor, to pick cotton, to chop sugarcane, to pick rice, tobacco, produce, all type of stuff. During that slavery, we were beaten, separated from our families, lynched, murdered. So many unspeakable things happened to black people during that time period. And a lot of those things still affect us to this day. And that is the root of the concept of free labor. Before colonialism, was slavery a thing? 100%. But it had stipulations. It was only for a certain amount of time. You weren't getting beat. You weren't getting lynched. You weren't separated from your family. And you were probably a slave because you were a prisoner of war. And you'd be just that for several years, and then you'd be released. Or you could buy yourself out of slavery and purchase your freedom. Live among the people that enslaved you, or go back home. This was how slavery was concepted before colonialism. And after colonialism, quite two-dimensionally, it was, we're going to take these people from over here, bring them over here, and force them to do what we want under the threat of death. among other things. I'm not even supposed to be this light in terms of my skin color. A lot of us this color or lighter are not supposed to be this color. I'll just leave that right there. Right? Just to highlight the level of atrocity that African people were subjected to during chattel slavery. All in the name of free labor. Now, to truly understand how to avoid negative results from free labor from artificial intelligence, it would make sense to examine the first time the concept of free labor was utilized to great length. And again, the first time it was utilized to great length is during slavery and colonialism, a topic that has everything to do with black people. And America has avoided this topic for as long as she could. But if you really want to reap the full benefits of artificial intelligence, you're going to have to address this. It's so interesting how the universe works. This is not like a passing thing. This can have huge ramifications depending on how much of society we hand over to artificial intelligence. And before we do anything like that, we need to understand what we're asking artificial intelligence to do for us. Because we're going to make them really, really smart. And if we haven't addressed or flushed out, in the interest of understanding the results of forcing a group of people to commit to hard labor for free, we might do that with AI and get some results that none of us are a fan of. So I think in the next 5 years, there has to be a massive recognizing and addressing of the issue of the enslavement of black people and colonialism in mass, at least in the context of artificial intelligence, just so we can learn what not to do. So we can learn what not to program AI with, or even what the potential ramifications of programming AI to do all the hard labor that we don't want to do, what that can be, what that can mean. But to do that, there has to be research, and for there to be accurate research, we have to address chattel slavery. Right? It's like so many people, run from this topic as if there's somewhere to run. And now we're getting to a point in technology and futurism where the future is here. The future is staring us right in the face. And for us to make sure that we don't get ourselves in a jam because we didn't understand what could happen based on the decisions that we're making as a society, we're going to have to address what happened to people that look like me. We're going to have to address cultural norms and societal norms that make some people feel okay and make other people feel less than. Because if we're going to ask robots to do all the stuff we don't want to do, the same way we forced black people to do a bunch of things that the people that forced us to do the things that they didn't want to do, that could have ramifications. The same way there are ramifications for chattel slavery for black people today that we're still affected by. The prison industrial complex, bigotry, housing discrimination, redlining, civil rights, like Jim Crow stuff, politics, all this stuff that happened because of the enslavement of African people. Has anyone ever thought like this could happen in an even weirder, stranger way that we've never seen before with robots if we don't understand how slavery and colonialism has affected culture and us today, right? It's more about doing the research so that we know how to relate to robots, or robots know how to relate to us. You know, this future is coming very soon. Meta is almost here. And then even still, like, I was reading an article, I was saying Meta won't solve a lot of the things that we're still afflicted by as people who frequent the internet. Like, the hate that you experience on social media nowadays is only going to get amplified by the metaverse. Because now these same racists and hate mongers have avatars. So it's kind of like we have the option of building incredibly advanced technology on top of a wonky culture and society that has yet to address the biggest issues for said culture and society. Or we can flush out the things that haven't been so great for everybody in said society, so that we can apply those new learnings to artificial intelligence, so that machines can accurately determine what human common sense is and how to utilize that, so that we don't get iRobot, Terminator, you know, The Matrix, bugged out sci-fi stuff like that. You know, it's like the pain of black people are sojourning in this part of the world. All that cannot stay under the rug. At some point, it's going to come up. And I think AI is the final frontier for avoiding talking about slavery. Like, if you want VR to work and not and work for you and not against you, the concept of free labor has to be explored. And should you explore that concept in the West, which you have no choice but to because we make culture, you have to address slavery. Because African people are the first capital of American capitalism. We are the first initial investment. We're the people that picked the cotton that turned into clothes. We're the people that picked the tobacco that turned into cigars and cigarettes. We're the people that picked the sugar cane that turned into sugar for your coffee and your tea. We did that. We picked the produce that went on your table. We did that. We fought in the Civil War with you. We did that. And then we went on to make countless inventions that were then stolen by masters and then patented by those same masters, never to credit the actual original black creator. And in a lot of instances, we don't even know who created a lot of things that we know for sure was created by a black person, because the person that owns the patent is a white person, a slave master. All of this is baked into the Western concept of free labor. And most people in position to do something of measurable effect in the realm of artificial intelligence have probably been conditioned to turn away from anything having to do with slavery or black issues or race issues. Maybe, maybe not, but I've never heard of a black person working in AI. I've heard of a black person working in tech. And that's not to say there aren't black people working in AI, but I've never heard of them. And neither of you. If you have, let me know in the comments. They don't bite. I promise. I checked. And I'm wondering where the influence, where the input, where the perspective will come from if we're not in these spaces. Right? Like, that's another thing too. Like, the future is being crafted and engineered and designed by one or two kinds of people. Maybe three, maybe. But that's not everybody. It doesn't reflect the needs of everybody. It doesn't reflect the concerns of everybody. And then furthermore, it's like, we're going to take all this time to build robots and Flint, Michigan still doesn't have water? I think our priorities are messed up. Now, if we want to build AI that can measure how much water Flint needs, there's something to that. If we could build AI that facilitates the sourcing of clean water for residents of Flint, Michigan, that's a step in the right direction. Artificial intelligence that helps us understand how artificial intelligence can utilize common sense so that they can think and act as human as possible in the interest of helping humans needs to happen first. Because if it's just about let's create these robots to do the things that we don't want to do, we might be repeating history. So while society thus far has suggested that it has no interest in addressing the very real history of chattel slavery in America, if you want AI to not have disastrous potential effects, we're going to have to in the next 5 years. I think that's a good place to end. This has been a great episode. Man, we talked about Jay-Z, how disrespectful some rap fans are, Basquiat, artificial intelligence. Man, we covered a lot. I'd love to know what you think, though. Let me know in the comments below one more time. They don't bite. I promise. I checked. Comments don't bite. Get down there. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all in a bit, man. Peace.